Christmas for $1 is a really sweet film. This was released in 2013. It's directed by John Lyde. It's written by Sally Meyer, based on the book by Gale, Sears and Ben Sowards. And it's set during the Great Depression. And I'll be honest, if you'd shown me this film and didn't tell me that, I wouldn't have guessed that the time period was then, because it doesn't feel like the Great Depression. The hairstyles, some of them, are far too modern, and in one of the early scenes, a couple of children barely touch their dinner and then ask to leave the table. This is the Great Depression. People could barely afford food, and this family is living in poverty. That's kind of the point of the film, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if you're going to get annoyed by that, that's just worth bearing in mind. But if you can look past that, I'd say it's worth watching, because it is a really enjoyable story. It is about this family who don't have a lot of money, but the father manages to scrape together $1. And they all put their names into a hat, and they do a secret Santa as they pluck out a name, and they're going to buy each person a gift with this total of $1. And what I loved about this immediately, I won't go into any spoiler details about what the gifts actually are, but as soon as the father suggested this, one of the little boys asked if they can make the gifts. I love the fact that even though they have the money, he was still thinking about putting that personal touch to it and actually making something. I just thought that was so sweet. And the film is all about making the best of what you have and doing kindness for each other. The teacher in this is putting together a bit of a competition where the children have to do good deeds, and every time they do a good deed, they get to put a marble into this box. And whoever puts the most marbles in gets to win this beautiful box at the end of it. And of course, there's a bit of a mystery there of, will one of the children get the box? And of course, will the children be able to find the perfect presents for each other, even though they don't have a lot of money? And it's all about coming together, being there for each other, making the best of what you have, and focusing on what really counts. I do think this could have been set whenever. It's just a story about a family who doesn't have a lot of money, and they could have set this any decade, because it just doesn't really feel like the Great Depression. So that bit, well, I wasn't necessarily disappointed by that, because I didn't watch this because it's set during the Great Depression. But if that is something that is drawing you to this film, then it might be something that's a little bit irritating. But as I said, if you can look past that, then I'd say it's a pretty enjoyable film. The narrative is great. The performances are brilliant. We have a cast including Brian Krause and Danielle C. Ryan. Really solid cast throughout. No problems with the performances. In fact, we had some really brilliant performances, particularly from the children. And honestly, I enjoyed it all the way through. It's moving. It's emotional. It's there's one moment that's quite funny, actually. I'll tell you with a spoiler warning, the bit that genuinely made me laugh. It's not a funny film necessarily. It's not a comedy, but there are obviously moments to keep it light, because otherwise it would be very heavy and maybe quite a depressing watch. But there are some moments in there that are quite fun, and I will give a highlight in a moment. It's uplifting, it's motivational, it's inspirational, it's a gorgeous narrative. And aside from the time period not feeling quite right, it ticks every other box, and I thoroughly recommend it. The bit that made me laugh out loud, this is a spoiler for something that happens, I think maybe in the final third, but there's this boy called Lenny. This is the last thing I have to say about the film, so if you don't want a spoiler, go and check out the film if you want to really thoroughly enjoy it. Lenny is not a nice person. And he's not one of the family's children. He's a boy at school, and he does something nasty, really nasty. And one of the older children decides to lift him up and hang him by his collar on a nail, so he's dangling in the air. And the children all walk away, leaving him dangling there. And then I believe it was his teacher came out of the building and saw him and just said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was like, bye Lenny. She just kind of acknowledged that he was hanging there and walked away, kind of saying, yes, he's an unruly child. This is probably what he deserves. I'm just going to leave him. Maybe not the best thing for an adult to do when a child is clearly in a difficult situation, but just her kind of dismissive attitude of the situation Lenny was in, because it's clearly something that this child deserves, rather amused me. But in general, it's not a funny film, but there are certainly some lighter moments to keep things a little bit more upbeat. It's a great film, really thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not perfect, but Christmas for $1 as a story is pretty wonderful with some really great characters, and I'm very happy to recommend it.